Welcome to Section 1 of Antibiotics. In this section, we'll be discussing penicillin G and V, but we'll just refer to both of these generically as penicillin. This is our overview image for antibiotics. If you look at this big box on the right, you can see penicillin listed here. Just like the other drugs in this box, penicillin works by disrupting peptidoglycan cross-linking, which makes it a beta-lactam. Beta-lactam refers to a signature component of these medications, which looks like a square ring. What happens is these beta-lactams will bind to penicillin binding protein, or PBP, which is depicted here in the cell wall. When beta-lactams bind to PBP, the peptidoglycan cannot get cross-linked, and that's because it's the PBP that normally does the cross-linking. In fact, another name for PBP is transpeptidase. Anyways, when the beta-lactams disrupt this peptidoglycan cross-linking, then the cell wall is weak and the bacteria will lyse. This means that beta-lactams work by directly killing bacteria. In other words, they are bactericidal. With that background, let's help you memorize all the details you need to know about penicillin. This story takes place outside of some townhomes where the owner has thrown together some festivities. To get inside this portion of the party, you just need to pay with some pennies. So it's not too expensive to have fun here. And right here, we see the man assigned to take the pennies. Anyways, pennies represents penicillin, the focus of the story. Near the townhome, there's a girl playing with a square hula hoop. This square ring looks just like a beta-lactam. So we will use square hula hoops like this in all of our stories that include beta-lactams. Before I continue, I want you to know that the mechanism for penicillin will be down here in this location, and the uses for penicillin will be in this location, and the side effects of penicillin will be in this location. Now let's continue with the mechanism. This hula hoop girl is hugging her boyfriend. And if you look closely, you can see he's holding a PB&J sandwich. This PB&J sandwich will be our recurring symbol for PBP, or penicillin binding protein. So penicillins and beta-lactams in general bind to PBP. Now this man has just been painting this fence. As you can see, this fence wall is incomplete, and there's this huge gap in the middle. It was this painter's responsibility to put these slats back in place. However, he's clearly distracted by his hula hoop girlfriend, so we can't finish the task. And now there's a big opening in the fence. This should help you remember that when beta-lactams attach to penicillin binding protein, they will prevent bacterial cell walls from cross-linking. Now notice that the color of these walls is red and white, or peppermint color. Well, peppermint kind of sounds like peptidoglycan, so peppermint walls like this will be our recurring symbol for peptidoglycan. In fact, the enzyme that cross-links peptidoglycan, making the cell wall strong, is penicillin binding protein. So now we have all the symbols to understand the mechanism, so let's bring it all together. The PB&J man is hugging his square hula hoop girlfriend, just like beta-lactams bind to PBP. This means he can't put those peppermint slats back in the fence, leaving a big gap, just like peptidoglycan can't get cross-linked when beta-lactams are binding to PBP. And creating this gap is how penicillin kills bacteria. Now let's look at another fence worker. He's on his break and also eating a PB&J sandwich. And another square hula hoop girl can see approaching him in a provocative way. She's thinking she can seduce him. Well, he wants nothing to do with this hula hooping siren, so he defiantly gestures that he's not interested. So bringing this together, the man's holding a PB&J and resisting the girl. So this should help you remember that if bacterial PBP mutates, then beta-lactams can't bind to the bacterial cell wall. Now this painter's wife, who also happens to be his business partner, sees this hula hooping harlot approach her husband. So she whips out a huge pair of scissors to cut her hula hoop with. Now the scissors represent beta-lactamases, which can break down penicillin. Beta-lactamases are another way that bacteria can resist penicillin, or beta-lactams in general. Now let's talk about the indications for penicillin, or what organisms penicillin can be used to treat. First, notice that there's a spiral staircase leading up to the roof of the townhome. You may recall from our microbiology videos that syphilis is a spirochete. So this spiral staircase should help you remember that penicillin can treat syphilis. Right near the townhome, there's a stage where a children's performance is going to be held. This acting stage will be our symbol for actinomyces to help you remember that penicillin can treat actinomyces. Now we can see that Abraham Lincoln got grabbed by a mugger who's now menacingly holding a knife to the president's throat. I guess this play is emphasizing how many threats there were against Abe Lincoln during his presidency. So I want to emphasize the fact that this acting mugger is holding a knife. We use knives to represent Neisseria species, and the fact that the young actor with the tall hat representing Abe Lincoln actually symbolizes meningitis, because the hat covers the head the way the meninges cover the brain. So together, the knife and the hat should make you think of Neisseria meningitidis. So penicillin can treat Neisseria meningitidis. Currently, the performers are low on funds, so they had to use this ice glacier prop from their previous performance about the Titanic in order for there to be enough seats for all the attendees. And this woman is pregnant, as you can see with her large pregnant belly. I can't imagine that the papier-mâché glacier she's sitting on is very comfortable, but she seems to enjoy the play nonetheless. Anyways, this glacier represents Strep agalactiae, and the pregnant woman represents pregnancy. Bringing these ideas together should help you remember that pregnant patients with Strep agalactiae infections should be given penicillin during the intrapartum period. A groundskeeper of these townhomes can be seen lying sick on a nearby couch with a maid, also from the townhomes, who's tending to him. The groundskeeper and the maid fell in love while working together in and around this complex. And since the guy isn't feeling great, she brought him a fresh pie to cheer him up. Pies are our recurring symbol for Strep pyogenes, and this maid is our recurring symbol for the M protein in Strep pyogenes. And it's this M protein that causes rheumatic fever, which we represent with this sickly, feverish man on the couch. So this whole idea should help you remember that penicillin can treat rheumatic fever, which is caused by the Strep pyogenes M protein. A coworker to this sickly groundskeeper sees these two lovebirds, and he grows uneasy because he knows that their boss will fire them both if he finds out these two are dating. Now this poor guy is thinking, should I tell them to go somewhere else? In fact, he's so uneasy that he starts nervously pulling on his collar, the collar which lies in close proximity to one's pharynx. And someone pulling at their collar in this manner is our recurring symbol for strep pharyngitis. So this should help you remember that penicillin can treat strep pharyngitis. Now the groundskeeper works hard, and the complex finally fulfilled his request for a new mower, so he can do his job more effectively. And we can see the brand new lawnmower nearby with the new tag still prominently hanging on it. This new mower is our recurring symbol for strep pneumo, or strep pneumoniae, which is another organism that penicillin can treat. Now let's discuss the adverse effects that can occur with penicillins. The adverse effects are basically caused by hypersensitivity reactions with the immune system. To help you remember hypersensitivity reactions, we have this sad guy crying from his window. He's a very sensitive man who is totally distraught with the noisy festivities taking place in his complex. He has tears just flowing down. So this overly sensitive man here will help you remember that penicillins can cause hypersensitivity reactions. Now let's talk about those specific reactions. First, notice that there's a pie salesman here. He has a bunch of balloons tied to his stand to help draw attention. And he has this set of tongs that are used to help him serve these pies. And those tongs kind of look like an antibody. And when he saw a customer approaching him, he whipped around excitedly. Unfortunately, this caused him to pop some of these red balloons. Red balloons are our recurring symbol for red blood cells, and the tongs here represent an antibody. So these antibody tongs popping the red balloon blood cells represents autoimmune destruction of red blood cells, or rather direct autoimmune hemolytic anemia. So this idea should help you remember that penicillins can cause direct autoimmune hemolytic anemia. So let's focus on that pie stand some more. I guess this was the pie stand that sweet M protein maid brought to her boyfriend. Anyways, when this pie salesman flinged around to greet that customer, he accidentally flung some pie filling toward the customer. Look at that poor kid getting splashed. Unfortunately, this boy is severely allergic to pecan pie, so now he's having a severe allergic reaction. You can even see him getting super red, and he has that fear in his eyes, like he realizes he's about to go into anaphylaxis. Well, this idea should help you remember that penicillins can cause some people to have severe allergic reactions, including anaphylaxis. Now we can see one of the excited people coming to the townhouse festivities. In fact, they were in such a hurry that he or she, who was driving the car, carelessly backed into this patch of kidney beans after getting off the interstate. These destroyed kidney beans represent kidney damage, or kidney inflammation, and the damaged interstate sign represents interstitial. So bringing these ideas together should help you remember that penicillins can cause acute interstitial nephritis. Now we can see a couple having lunch on a nearby park table. Now the girl had recklessly taken a drink from a bottle of syrup. She thought she would impress her boyfriend if she drank a bunch of syrup in front of him. As you might imagine, taking a drag from a bottle of syrup made her feel quite sick, and now I think she needs to vomit. How gross. Oh, poor girl. I guess it's just a bad date all around. Anyways, syrup and sickness should make you think of serum sickness. So this should help you remember that penicillin can cause serum sickness. Her date is not impressed and may not have even noticed her attempts to impress him. In fact, he looks pretty absorbed with some stevia packets on the table. Anyways, stevia packets like this will be our recurring symbol for Stevens-Johnson syndrome, which is another potential adverse effect of penicillin. And that should be all you need to know about penicillin.